This week, we're talking about looking for a new job, part 2.
You are listening to Love Your Job Before You Leave It, the podcast for ambitious, high-achieving women who are ready to stop feeling stressed about work and kiss burnout goodbye forever. Whether you're starting a business or staying in your day job, this show will give you the coaching and guidance you need to start loving your work today. Here's your host, career coach Corey Lynn.
Hey, y'all. Hello, hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. I am so excited to be here with y'all talking to you today. It is so cold right now. I'm kind of bummed. It had been warm and sunny and beautiful here off and on for the last several weeks. And I was like feeling it. I was like, yeah, spring is here, even though it's only February. And then we get some cold weather. And I took a walk a little bit ago and it was super cold. Maybe it's super cold where you are too. Maybe you like it. I don't know. I'm ready to have some sun though. So hopefully we'll be having that soon. But if not, I will do my best with the cold weather as long as I can, or I guess as long as I have to. All right. This week, we're going to talk about looking for a new job. And it's a part 2 because we actually have an episode already. I think it's episode 65 on looking for a new job. And the funny thing is, I was like, wow, I can't believe I've never recorded a podcast about like how to get a job or how to like find a new job. And whenever I have like that kind of thought and I'm like planning a new episode, I often just do a little Google search just in case I did do a podcast on that and just forgot, like it happened to slip my mind. And I'm glad I did that Google search because when I did, Google was like, yeah, episode 65, looking for a new job. And I was like, wow, I forgot I ever did that. And then I was like, I wonder what it says. So I went and had to listen to it. And so there's lots of good information in that episode too. In that episode, I kind of talk about some of the thought patterns that I see getting in the way of people being willing to look for a new job and some of the things that come up around like, rejection and the resilience we need to feel to get a new job and some of the things that come up around like confidence. And it's got lots of good information, but I know even more stuff about how to get a new job or how to get new work. And so I wanted to do another podcast episode. And I especially wanted to do one right now because I know there have been a lot of layoffs recently. And I think it's a scary thing to have happen if you are laid off, even if you aren't laid off at a time when like lots of people are getting laid off, that can kind of be really scary. It can bring up like lots of difficult emotions and catastrophizing and worry about like, what if you also get laid off or like, what if something else happens and you need to get a new job? So I thought it was a really timely moment to revisit this topic and this conversation. Okay, so when it comes to getting a new job, I kind of want to touch again on the mindset pieces of getting a new job. And then I also want to give y'all some ideas and insights about ways that I've gotten jobs or the ways that I've seen other people get jobs, because I think both pieces are really important. This podcast is mostly about mindset and about using different thoughts and ideas and perspectives to create more of what we want in life and to give ourselves permission to create a life that's like more uniquely satisfying to us, but also understanding like exactly what actions other people are taking and how they get jobs is also important. And I think something that happens is like, if you don't know anybody who's ever gotten the kind of job you want to get, then like you might not have any idea like the mindset those people have to get that job, sure, but also like what are the actual actions they take once they get their mindset in order. And one thing I will say is that when we get our mindsets in order, I think lots of new action ideas come to us. So like listening to the mindset part of this podcast might also inspire you to come up with some actions I'm not listing. But I think also sometimes they're just actions that once you know about them or have done them, they're obvious. But if you don't know about them or haven't done them, then they're not obvious. So I want to share those with you as well. Okay, so the mindset piece first. Before I realized I'd already recorded a podcast about this, I was thinking through like what I thought was most important. And here's what I came up with. The most important pieces are your thoughts about your current/previous work. So your thoughts about the work you currently do or have done in the past, your thoughts about the work you would like to do. So the work you want to step into next, whether it's more of the same, but like somewhere else or at a different level, or whether it's some other kind of work. And your thoughts about how long it should take you to get a new job. And then I was thinking more about it, and I would also just add like your thoughts about yourself in general. like in general as a worker, as an employee, not like in general about everything. Although some of your everything thoughts also may be relevant to this too. So let's take it piece by piece. I think for a lot of people, they don't have great thoughts about their previous and current work. So a lot of people aren't sure what they can do with their work history, or they aren't sure like if they can make the leaps they want to make. Or I think a lot of people actually have a really hard time articulating the value of what they've already done. And that's probably because mostly I don't think we necessarily have a lot of practice at that, especially because, like, if you were socialized as a girl or a woman, or if you were socialized with other marginalized identities, and even if you weren't socialized with those, a lot of us were taught like not to brag and not to think highly of ourselves. And being able to explain our work history and the power of our work history and why it makes us a really good fit can feel a lot like bragging. Like being able to look at what you know how to do and explain the value of it, I think for many of us can feel a lot like bragging. So, on the very basic level, what I want you to be thinking through is like, what are my current thoughts? If I don't edit my own perspectives at all, what are my current thoughts about my career history, my current work experience, my previous work experience? And like, I think an interesting hack to use here is what would it look like if I were bragging? Now, you maybe aren't going to feel bragging like on your actual resume or bragging in the actual job interview or bragging on the cover letter. But when you can think about like, okay, my assignment actually is to brag about what I've done, then you can sort of like, I don't know, like almost like act or like get in character. You're like, like this creative writing assignment is to brag about what I've done versus to talk about it the way I normally would. So here's what that's going to do for you. It's going to allow you to think and talk about the work experience differently. And probably you're not going to like turn in the brag version, but the brag version is going to get you closer, I think, probably to what you want to be having on your resume or the ways you want to be able to explain your current work and your work history. Now, let's dig into that a little bit deeper. When you're bragging, it's like not just any old bragging, not like I'm the best. Try to brag in terms of value, specifically in terms of like value to the organization, value to like the business's bottom line, because that's usually what people are concerned with when they're thinking about hiring. They're like, how are your capacities and skills matching the job listing? But also, how are your capacities and skills going to help the company achieve its goals, help the team achieve its goals, help everyone else move forward? So a lot of us are used to downplaying our excellence or like this old thing or, oh, it's not a big deal or like, oh, anyone could have done it. So what you want to do is like put that thought down, flip it and reverse it, as I sometimes say. And I think recently we had that podcast about like entertaining the opposite thought. This is basically what I'm inviting you to do here, but I'm giving you the idea ahead of time that what you're trying to do on purpose is to brag and is to explain the value in a braggerly manner. And then after you do that, you can always go back in and like zhuzh it a little bit or like floss it, take out some of the bragginess, shift it maybe more into like a polite tone or whatever. But starting from audacious, outlandish bragging might actually, first of all, help you have a little bit more fun, which is great. I think job searching often feels like pulling teeth. So injecting any fun we can into the process is great, but it's also going to help you frame your current and previous work experience in a much more compelling manner. And compelling to who? Compelling to yourself, which is excellent because that's going to give you more courage and more confidence, but also in a more compelling manner to hiring managers, recruiters, and people who are, in the position to say if you're a good fit or not, or to like move you forward in the job application process. Okay, now remember I was saying I'm also going to mention some specific actions you can take. So I was going to save all the actions for the end, but I actually think there's one that goes with this. So I'm going to go ahead and mention it now. So one of the ways that I have gotten jobs in the past, and I know other people who've gotten jobs this way, is to work with a recruiting agency or a talent agency. Now, some people really don't like this methodology because basically, like you're sort of the product, because when the agency places you into an organization, they're going to make money on placing you. However, they also have information that you don't necessarily have. So when I went through this, I think I was represented by like 3 or 4 agencies. This was in Seattle. It was before I landed my corporate IT job, and it's actually how I landed my corporate IT job. And what they were able to do is they were able to listen to me talk about my experience and my skills, and they were able to help me explain those in a manner that was going to be understandable, digestible, and appealing to potential hiring managers, internal recruiters, and stuff like that. So, because I was essentially sort of their product, they helped me prepare and look good for getting that job. And so that was really useful to me. And so instead of me kind of going through the thing I just taught you about, where like I had to brag to myself and then like sort of zhuzh that bragging back down and like package it into something that was more like appropriate to the task at hand, what I did was got in touch with these recruiting and like sort of like talent agencies and was able to talk to them, like still a little like swaggery, especially because I was younger and I thought that was like sort of required, but also like I was able to kind of just sort of frankly tell them what I could do and what I thought I'd like to do. And then they like helped guide me. And then I basically had someone else to like walk me through that thing. So you can walk yourself through this, but it's also perfectly acceptable and fine if you want to either pay someone to walk you through it. There are people out there who do that, like people who work on resumes and cover letters with people and people who help translate your experience into something that's packaged up really nicely. And then recruiting agencies, those people are going to already have relationships with a lot of companies. And they're also going to have like a really dialed in understanding of what is needed and the specific things you could apply for. If you're not sure like what your job experience and history could even get you, that can be something that's really helpful. Now, one thing from my personal experience that you do want to be careful with this about is when I did this, if that company or any of those several companies who were representing me, if they represented me to a company, then I could no longer represent myself to that company. It's like they owned that relationship. So I would have wanted to be careful and not let them present me to anyone where I already had a relationship at that company, like if I knew someone who worked there, et cetera, because then they are sort of the gatekeeper to that. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so this is the part though. It's like, what are your thoughts about your current experience and what are the useful thoughts going to be? And if the idea of bragging makes you really uncomfortable, then choosing that frame on purpose and bragging on purpose, and knowing that you're going to go back through and edit it so no one's necessarily going to see your fully bragged out version, that could be a really powerful way to teach yourself to think and speak differently about the experience you have. And I want to remind you, it's about the value, not just for you to think of your own value, but it's also being able to explain your value to hiring managers, to companies, to recruiters, et cetera, which means being able to tie the skills that you have to the outcomes that they care about. And sometimes those are going to be outcomes they care about that you have read from the job listing, but sometimes it's going to be outcomes that they care about from what you can ascertain about what their company is trying to do. Okay, the next one is your thoughts about the work you would like to do. I think this one's really important because a lot of us, if there's something we would like to do, a lot of us have this it's not possible, or I could never do it, or it wouldn't work out for me. And as you can maybe guess, a lot of those are not super helpful if that's what we actually are going to go after. In order to convince your brain to go after things, it's imperative that you believe they're at least a little bit possible. And the more possible you can believe they are, the better, because the brain does not like wasted effort. The brain does not want you to go after things you have no chance of getting. That's why when you want to go after something and you think it's not likely, it's really, really hard to get yourself to take action on it. You've probably noticed this before if you have some kind of habit that you're trying to build, or if there's some kind of goal you're trying to go after and it's pulling teeth to get yourself going. It's probably because on some level you either believe it's unlikely or you believe it's going to be deeply painful or going to involve something really unpleasant. The brain doesn't want to do anything with any of those. So if there is a job you would like to do, going ahead and pitching yourself on the possibility of it and things could move you towards it, and kind of holding that vision for yourself in a way that makes you feel good instead of holding that vision for yourself in a way that makes you feel shitty. Now, this can look a lot of ways too, because sometimes you want to do something and you're is this even a job? But if you can come to like, maybe it is a job, then you can get Google out and do some research and find out if it is a job and when it's a job, who's it a job for, how do people get paid for that job. I remember like a really long time ago learning that there was someone who worked at some big tech company. I think it was Google. And the person like basically just like led meditation classes. I think I have not researched this since then, but I was like, what? I didn't even know that could be a job. I want that job, which is hilarious because like it's not like I never meditate, but I don't meditate very often. And I don't think I meditated very often back then. But that was like the beginning seeds of me wanting to be a coach and talk to people about how to have a better experience of their work and their life. And this person doing this thing in this big tech company was one of the only people I'd ever seen who was making a really nice, solid living, helping people have a better experience of their stressed out work life. And so I was like very excited, like, oh my gosh, it does exist. And then, of course, immediately heartbroken because I was like, but I'll never be able to do like something like that, which surprise, surprise. Now I do something like that, but I do it on my own terms in my own business, not within a big tech company. So it is a little different too. But the example before of what I was saying of like, use it as something that makes you feel good. Like, okay, someone's doing it. So like it can be done. So it is possible. This is a proof of concept. Maybe it's not the very next job I could get, but like, how can I move myself towards that versus something, using it as something to make yourself feel bad. Like, oh, I'll never get there. Like there's only going to be one person ever who gets paid for that. And it's taken by this person. So like, I'm fucked, right? Job searching is hard enough. Applying for jobs is hard enough. It involves a lot of action that we're not certain what the outcome is going to be. And it involves a lot of risking rejection. So let's not make it harder by telling ourselves mean stories about it, because when we make it harder, then we just don't do it, or we have a really terrible experience of doing it and then we burn ourselves out. And then we're either burnt out in our current job, burnt out with no job, or burnt out in the new job that we somehow managed to still get. So that's not what we want to have happen. Actually, this sort of goes for anything. When we're thinking about our work history and our current work experience, or when we're thinking about the work we'd like to do, it's really imperative that we like hold that positive vision for ourselves of like, I've done some cool shit. I'm capable of doing other cool shit. And, you know, I can move there bit by bit, even if I can't get there in the next role. And maybe I can get there in the next role. Okay. Then the next one was your thoughts about how long it should take you to get a new role. So a lot of us are like really into instant gratification, and it makes sense. Like the brain really likes it. It's like so fun when we get an immediate reward. And the way that our brains work and are wired, from what I understand, is like heavily geared towards immediate rewards. When we get an immediate reward, it's very easy for the brain to make a connection between the thing we did and the reward. And when rewards come later, it's sort of harder for our brain to make the connection between the effort and the reward. That's why we like things that reward us instantly, right? Like getting on social media and like seeing all of our little notifications. And we dislike things that, you know, take longer to reward us, like doing our PT exercises for weeks and weeks before we actually start to notice a difference in how our body feels. That being said, when we can set ourselves up well here, it can really benefit us. So kind of like the way I would think about it is setting yourself up that it's normal for it to take a while to get a new job. Now, as we say on the podcast all the time, we want to set ourselves up for what normal is. And then we always want to hold space for like insanely magical. Like maybe this is the time we get the first job we apply to. Maybe this is the time we get cold recruited by our dream company. Maybe this is the time that we get a new job in a week instead of it taking like 3 to 6 months. So we're open to the availability and the possibility of that like super magical thing, but we're not expecting it. So if it doesn't happen, we are able to be like, yeah, of course, like this is in like the normal range of what it makes sense to take to get a new job. And like sometimes we go out of the normal range, and let's also normalize that, especially as we're more and more geared into exactly what we're looking for. If we want a really specific kind of role, if we want a really specific kind of work culture. I've seen this before when I've coached executives, like trying to find the right next role at the executive level, it can take a little longer. So basically, I always love to give the idea that like magical things can happen. And I think magical things do happen. And I've had magical things happen in my job searches in the past. But I also think it's so important to normalize for ourselves that like often things will take time, and it's okay if they do. And the more specific we are about what we're looking for, the more time they may take. And I realize like sometimes we're sort of in a kind of desperate situation where we really need a new job and we really need it immediately. And I've been in that position myself, and panicking and stressing about that did not result in me getting a new job immediately. It did take several months. I did live on credit card debt, and I realized that's not an option for everyone. I also got a part-time job at Trader Joe's, and I realized that's also not an option for everyone. But I just want to say that just to point out, like, I think sometimes we're like, fuck, but I really need a new job and I have to have it and I have to get it right now. And like sort of like puts us into this panic headspace. And it feels really true. And it may be really true, but just because we're panicking doesn't mean the process of getting a new job is going to go any faster. And honestly, a lot of times when we're panicking, the process does not, like, it goes slower because we're not able to like bring our best self and best energy to it. And we sort of have to like tend to our own panic versus doing the actual activities that are going to get the job. Okay. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about was like your thoughts about you. So I think if your thoughts about you are like that you struggle or that you have a hard time or like nothing ever works out for you, it's again going to be hard to get yourself to take action on this. And if your thoughts about you are like everything works out immediately and like it's all happening right away, that might be frustrating because even though, like I said, that's possible and it's great if it does happen, a lot of times with job searching and job applications and getting a job, it doesn't happen that way. So I would really invite you to consider a set of thoughts like, I can figure this out. I know some things I can do. I'll figure out the other things along the way. I have really great resources. There's lots of great articles. There's lots of great ways to make connections. There's lots of great ways to get into different industries and companies. I'll just keep going. It's okay for this to take time. I have things I can do to like help myself manage in the meantime. And like, even as you're saying those, you might be like, but I don't have things I'll do. But the reality is there are things you can do. Like if you need money immediately and you're believing that like you're fucked, then you're not going to be thinking of ways to get money immediately. And a lot of times there are ways to get money immediately, or like, you know, like what I did, I put stuff on credit, but like if I hadn't had credit as an option, it's like, could I have moved in with someone else? Could I have sold something? I had a friend who one time like sold their car because the job situation wasn't working like as fast as they want to. I have other friends who've done freelance. You know, people ask for loans. I realized that like none of these are like super fun things like we want to do. But reminding yourself that you have options is so powerful, because when we remember we have options, then we can calm down a little bit and we can sort of like bring ourselves back to a calm headspace from which we can actually do the work of either figuring out how we're going to get the money we need to have immediately or figuring out the next steps we're going to take in our job search. Okay, so those are the mindset pieces. And then I also did mention already, working with a recruiting agency is one of those, you know, actions you can take that can be helpful and that's been helpful to me. Here are some other ideas. And like, this is not by any means an exhaustive list, but I wanted to just give you some examples. Like, I know a lot of other people who've gotten jobs through networking and through building relationships. And I've gotten a job, or at least a few jobs this way, and like all kinds of different jobs. I got a job like at a little boutique marketing company once. And I mean, I interviewed for it and stuff, but I knew someone who had worked there through like going to happy hour events, but like work kind of happy hour events, or like professional happy hour events at a co-working space. And I got a bartending job one time at a country bar in Seattle. And I got that job because I country danced there several nights a week. And one of the other regulars got offered a cocktail waitressing job. And I was like, I want to work here too. You gave this person a job. Can I have a job? And like, I did not think that was going to work really, but it did work. And I got that job, which is also a great thing to remember. Like if you're really wanting to get a different professional job, but you're in a pinch, there are all kinds of different jobs you can get. And sometimes there are people who need some help who are already in your network. So if you let people know that you're like looking for various kinds of opportunities, they can help you. One thing I'll say about this is when you're asking other people to help you, be specific about what you're looking for. I think when I was originally like sort of looking for like my first 9-to-5 job, I made myself very difficult to help because I was so like kind of desperate to like have a 9-to-5 job that I wasn't able to be specific about what I was looking for. And that actually made me more difficult to help. I was kind of in that headspace of like, I'll take anything, I'll work anywhere, I'll do anything that I can do, I will do. And that sounds like it's going to be easier because you could like fit in for so many different things, but it actually made me harder to help because people weren't clear. And if people aren't clear, like they're probably not going to refer someone to you. Also, it's, you have to remember that when you're asking for things like referrals, people are maybe like using their reputation. And so they want to be putting people together that they think are going to be a good match. And if you're sort of all over the place or like not really sure what you want, or like if it appears that like maybe you would take one job and then hop to a different job, that's probably going to make you a little bit harder for people to refer. So getting really clear on what you're looking for. And like, it could be something like, listen, I really need work immediately. So if you know somebody who needs help at their bar, like I'll go bartend for a while, but like ultimately I'm looking for this kind of job. Like it's not like you can only be interested in one thing, but I think just getting clear with yourself about what you're looking for and then being clear and honest with other people. Now, I'll also say like with networking, the closer you are to the person, maybe the more behind the scenes information you're going to give them. Sometimes if I'm like professionally networking, I maybe wouldn't share that I'd be willing to work at a bar. I'm a kind of an open book, so I probably would, but you get to decide for you, like when you're networking with whom, how much you're going to share. So when it comes to networking, you can think about people you already know. Where do they work? You can go on LinkedIn. Who do they know? Like, do they have contacts that like maybe they could put you in touch with who work at the companies you're interested in going at? Can you ask people for informational interviews? Can you go to like meetup groups in your local area? Can you go to meetup groups that are virtual? There's all kinds of different ways to do networking. The more immediately you need a job, I think the more it makes sense to start with people you have the closest connections with because they already know you, trust you, like you, provided that's true in the relationship like, that you're thinking about leveraging. And then I think of going to networking events or like meetups and stuff like that, or like those professional happy hours I used to go to. That's something where kind of maybe you're more planting seeds. Those may take longer to bloom and become available as actual opportunities because it often does take time for people to know, like, and trust us and be willing to make connections for us or refer us to other people or, consider us working for like their organization or stuff like that. Okay. So those are the main action items I wanted to go over with you. I guess it's really just two, which is like I've had really good luck like I said before, with recruiting agency, I landed a really excellent job that way. And they were able to help me understand what my background and skills could work for. Like I probably would not have applied for that job that I got, but I got the job. I did a great job in the job and I really excelled in that organization. But like if I had just seen that job description, I would have never applied for it because I didn't actually understand that my background made me qualified for it. So again, there are probably lots of people in your life who can help you in this way. Sometimes those people are recruiters. Sometimes those people are your friends. Sometimes those people are your current colleagues, former colleagues. There can be all kinds of different people that you can tap, like sort of like phone a friend, ask a professional. There are lots of resources also available online. Like this podcast is not at all meant to be exhaustive because like I said before, mostly I want to go over mindset stuff with you. But there are all kinds of possibilities available. And when you do get the mindset shit sort of in order, it doesn't have to be 100% order, right? Like just like when you start to begin that maybe there's a possibility that things could go the way you want them to, then also you'll go looking for actions and you'll be more willing to take them and try them because your brain will begin to believe that it's like worth it and that it could work and be useful and valuable for you. And turn into something you like. Okay, there are a few more points I want to make, and then I'm going to wrap it up because this is already a long podcast for us, y'all. But the other things I wanted to say are like, don't try to win the job. Like when you're interviewing, assess whether a job is a good fit for you and be yourself and tell the truth. Be the person you want to be when you get the job, because I see this where like people will sort of like perform in a job interview or perform like to try to get the job, but then they don't want to be that person when they have the job. And I think it makes so much more sense, like on first dates, in job interviews, in friendships, etc., for you to not try to win the situation and for you instead to try to like be who you want to be in this situation and see if that's a good fit for that person. Like, do you like them? Do they like you? Like, are you going to be able to be yourself there? Because like landing a killer job that you can't be yourself at and that you like hate every minute of, but you like want it, that's like no fun for anyone. Okay. So again, we have a lot of information in this podcast. Take and select the pieces that are useful for you. If all of it together is too much, just pick one fucking thing I've said today and ignore the rest. It's easy to get overwhelmed when we're job searching and applying for new jobs and like thinking about moving our career forward in this way. That's what I have for you today. And listen, I know that this was all a lot. And if you don't want to take it piece by piece and you do sort of want to hit everything all at once, like faster, then sign up and let's have a consult about it, because a lot of this stuff is very actionable, but trying to take it on all at once by yourself can be a lot. And having a coach in your corner can really help you think through how to do it and can have you have someone to talk to every week so that you can keep moving things forward. And I think also one of the best things about having a coach is like when you do get stuck, it's a lot easier often for the coach to see what the obstacle is and help you move it out of the way. So if you want to get a new job and you're like, fuck yeah, 2023 is the time to do it, I can help you with that. So come sign up for a one-on-one consult and let's talk all about it. All right. Thanks, y'all. I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Love Your Job Before You Leave It. We'll have another episode for you next week. And in the meantime, if you're feeling super fired up, head on over to CoreyLynn.com for more guidance and resources.